sun rose over the quiet Texas countryside, casting a golden glow on the sprawling ranch that served as the perfect venue for the wedding of the year. Pastor Lucas Harmon, a charismatic 28-year-old with piercing eyes and a magnetic charm, had just tied the knot with Olivia Morgan, a 50-year-old widow known for her immense wealth and philanthropic endeavors. Their union was unconventional, whispered about in the pews and across the community, but no one dared to question God's will, or so they thought. 2 months later, Olivia's body was discovered buried in a shallow grave, her lifeless form barely concealed by the disturbed earth of a remote field. The once admired young pastor had become the subject of a nationwide manhunt, his sermons of redemption and faith now overshadowed by his descent into darkness. What led to this horrifying act? How could a man who preached love and salvation commit such an unthinkable crime? And what secrets did Olivia uncover that sealed her tragic fate? Stay with us as we unravel the chilling events that culminated in a murder so brutal it shattered an entire community. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crimes Corner for more gripping narratives that expose the darkest corners of the human heart. Let us know in the comments, what would you do if faced with the ultimate betrayal? Pastor Lucas Harmon seemed like a man who had it all. A rising star in the small-town Texas religious scene, Lucas was adored by his congregation for his fiery sermons, which combined traditional values with a relatable charm that drew in young and old alike. His sharp suit, confident demeanor, and piercing gaze made him the very image of a modern man of God. Yet, his humility, always thanking his late mother for inspiring his faith, sealed the hearts of those who believed he was destined for greatness. His recent marriage to Olivia Morgan, however, sparked quiet murmurs among the congregation. Olivia, a wealthy 50-year-old widow known for her philanthropy and sharp business acumen, was as much a mystery as she was a presence in the community. She had funded local projects, donated generously to the church, and quietly rebuilt her life after losing her first husband in a car accident nearly a decade earlier. Though Lucas preached about love knowing no boundaries, the 22-year age gap between the two raised eyebrows. Many wondered why a young, ambitious pastor would marry an older woman instead of pursuing someone closer to his age. Publicly, Lucas described Olivia as his rock, a woman who saw his potential and encouraged his ministry like no one else had. Privately, however, the reasons were far more sinister. For Olivia, marrying Lucas seemed like a second chance at love and companionship. Her life had been marked by hard decisions and loneliness after her husband's death. Lucas swept in with his charm, assuring her that their meeting was ordained by God himself. Their whirlwind courtship was filled with grand gestures, serenades in front of the congregation, romantic dinners in the church hall, and promises of building a life of faith together. But Lucas's motivations weren't rooted in love or divine intervention. Beneath his charismatic exterior lurked a man driven by greed and ambition. Olivia's wealth was his golden ticket, a way to fund his growing ministry, secure a life of comfort, and bury the secrets of his past. For now, the facade held strong. The town rallied around the newlyweds, offering congratulations and gifts, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Lucas wore the mask of a devoted husband flawlessly, but cracks were already forming. Cracks that Olivia was starting to notice. Before Lucas Harmon became the revered Pastor Harmon of Maplewood, Texas, he was simply Lucas, a troubled young man with a shadowy past he had worked tirelessly to erase. Growing up in a strict, conservative household, Lucas was taught to project perfection while concealing the chaos brewing beneath. His father, a hardline disciplinarian, enforced rigid religious ideals, and his mother, a quieter, gentler presence, struggled to shield Lucas from the pressures of his father's expectations. In his teenage years, Lucas led a double life. On Sundays, he was the obedient son, sitting dutifully in the church pews, but during the week, he sought escape. He fell in with an older crowd in a nearby city, indulging in risky behaviors that ranged from petty theft to drug experimentation. But his most closely guarded secret was the one that clashed most violently with his upbringing, his attraction to men. In the conservative town of Maplewood, coming out as gay was unthinkable. Lucas buried his feelings, rationalizing them as fleeting temptations, and sought refuge in the church. But the facade cracked when he was caught in a compromising situation with another boy from a neighboring town. The fallout was swift and brutal. His father disowned him, and the boy's family moved away to avoid the scandal. Lucas was left with a deep well of shame and a burning determination to reinvent himself. In his early 20s, Lucas re-emerged as a charismatic figure with a newfound faith. He claimed to have experienced a spiritual awakening and began preaching about redemption, drawing from his own experiences of straying from the path. His story resonated deeply with his congregation, who saw him as living proof of divine grace. By the time he was 28, Lucas had grown his church from a small gathering of 10 to a congregation of over 300. However, the truth remained hidden. Every weekend, under the guise of ministering to rural communities, Lucas would drive several hours to meet Daniel, a 34-year-old artist he had met at an out-of-town gallery. Their relationship was passionate, but meticulously secretive. Lucas insisted on meeting in places where no one would recognize him. Daniel, though suspicious of Lucas's reluctance to be seen in public, stayed because of Lucas's charm and the promises of a future where they could be together openly. Lucas thought he had balanced his double life perfectly until he met Olivia Morgan. Her wealth and connections were irresistible. Marrying her was a strategic move, a chance to secure his future, fund his ministry, and cement his position as a community leader. But Lucas underestimated Olivia's intelligence and curiosity. The walls of his carefully constructed facade were about to come crashing down. At first, Olivia Morgan was smitten. Lucas's charm was intoxicating, and his ability to weave words of devotion and faith made her believe she had found a man who truly valued her. She saw herself as his anchor, the steady figure behind his rising ministry. Olivia often ignored the whispers about their age gap and the speculative reasons behind their union, brushing them off as jealousy or narrow-mindedness. But Olivia was no fool. She hadn't built her fortune and navigated a lifetime of challenges by being blind to the intentions of those around her. Over time, subtle inconsistencies in Lucas's behavior began to gnaw at her. He was often distant, spending long weekends away under the pretext of outreach programs. His phone, always within reach, was locked with a code she didn't know. And there was the way he avoided intimacy. Not just physically, but emotionally, as though he were constantly holding a part of himself back. The breaking point came during one of Lucas's weekend missions. Olivia, suspecting there was more to these trips than he let on, decided to do something she never thought she'd need to do in her marriage. She followed him. Hiring a private investigator felt extreme, so she opted to drive herself. It was a decision that would change everything. On a crisp Saturday morning, Olivia tailed Lucas's car out of Maplewood. She kept a safe distance as he drove 3 hours west to a small arts district on the outskirts of Austin. Her heart raced when she saw him pull into the driveway of a modest home. She parked nearby, waiting, her mind spinning with possibilities. A home visit for someone in need? A secret business deal? What she saw shattered her world. Lucas stepped out of his car and was greeted by a man, Daniel, who embraced him intimately. That wasn't the problem. The shock came when they went from hugging to kissing for almost 2 minutes. Olivia sat frozen, watching as the two men disappeared into the house. Her mind struggled to process what she had just witnessed. The man she married, the man she trusted, was living a life she couldn't have imagined. Olivia drove back to Maplewood in a daze, the revelation crashing over her in waves. But it wasn't just the betrayal of his infidelity that haunted her. It was what this meant for his carefully curated image and their marriage. As she combed through memories of their relationship, small details began to take on new meaning. The way he deflected questions about his past, the nights he seemed distant and preoccupied, and the sudden urgency with which he had proposed all pointed to deeper motives. Her suspicions were confirmed when she found a folder of documents in Lucas's office later that week. Inside were unsigned papers, including a draft will that named him as the sole beneficiary of her estate, and notes about upcoming investment opportunities tied to her wealth. Her heart sank as the horrifying truth dawned. Lucas had married her not out of love, but as a calculated move to gain access to her fortune. Feeling trapped and betrayed, Olivia didn't know where to turn. She confided in the assistant pastor David Ward, a man she trusted implicitly. Through tears, She told him everything: the affair, the financial manipulation, and her growing fear that Lucas might do something drastic to protect his secrets. David urged her to confront Lucas carefully, warning her to tread lightly. But Olivia, a woman who had faced her share of life's hardships, wasn't about to back down. She decided it was time to confront her husband and force him to come clean, hoping against all odds that he might repent and change. She didn't know it at the time, but her decision to reveal what she knew would set in motion a series of events that would lead to her untimely and gruesome death. The evening Olivia decided to confront Lucas was eerily quiet. She had spent the day preparing herself, going over every possible reaction he might have. Would he confess? Deny? Try to manipulate her with his charm as he had done to so many others? She didn't know, but she was determined to find out. Lucas arrived home late as usual, his tie loosened and his demeanor casual. Olivia was waiting in the living room, her expression calm but resolute. She had rehearsed her words 100 times, but when she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Lucas," she began, "we need to talk." He froze for a moment, then turned to face her with a warm, disarming smile. "Of course, Olivia. What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, clutching the armrest of her chair. "I followed you last weekend. I know about that guy. I know about your relationship with him." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. For a fleeting second, Lucas's mask of composure faltered. His jaw tightened, and his eyes darted toward her, searching for signs of weakness. But Olivia held his gaze, unflinching. "Before you say anything," she continued, her voice steadier now, "I also found the papers in your office, the will, the investments. You planned to take everything from me, didn't you?" Lucas's face darkened. The charming pastor his congregation adored was gone, replaced by a man radiating cold fury. "You don't understand," he said sharply. "You've been digging into things you shouldn't. You're going to ruin everything." "No, Lucas," Olivia shot back, her voice rising. "You ruined everything. You lied to me, used me, and betrayed everything I thought we stood for." Lucas began to pace, his hands running through his hair as he muttered under his breath. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how hard I've worked to build this life, to fix what I've been through." "And this is fixing it?" Olivia countered, standing now. "By deceiving everyone? By deceiving me?" The argument escalated, their voices echoing through the house. Lucas's anger turned to desperation as Olivia revealed one final blow. "I told David," she said. "He knows everything. You can't hide anymore." At this, Lucas stopped cold. The mention of the assistant pastor was a breaking point. His face twisted in rage, and his voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "You've left me no choice." The words sent a chill down Olivia's spine. For the first time, she felt a twinge of fear. Lucas approached her, his demeanor calm, yet unnervingly intense. "We can fix this," he said softly, reaching for her hand. "Let's go somewhere. Just the two of us. We need to talk without all this noise." Olivia hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her not to trust him, but the part of her that had once loved him hesitated. Against her better judgment, she agreed. Lucas suggested they drive out to a remote retreat. A quiet spot, he claimed, would help them think clearly. Olivia agreed, hoping for a resolution, unaware that she had just sealed her fate. The road stretched endlessly under the night sky, the headlights of Lucas's car slicing through the darkness. Olivia sat in the passenger seat, her hands resting uneasily in her lap. Lucas was eerily calm, his focus fixed on the road. The tension in the car was palpable, broken only by the faint hum of the engine. "Where exactly are we going?" Olivia asked, her voice cautious. "There's a spot out by the lake," Lucas replied without glancing at her. "It's peaceful. No distractions. We can talk properly there." Olivia nodded but remained wary. Her gut told her something was wrong, but she pushed the thought aside, convincing herself that Lucas wouldn't harm her. He was angry, yes, but surely not capable of violence. Or so she thought. After nearly an hour, they arrived at a desolate clearing near a small, secluded lake. The air was cold, the silence oppressive. Lucas parked the car and stepped out, motioning for Olivia to follow. She hesitated but eventually got out, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Why here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lucas turned to her, his face a mask of unreadable calm. "Because this is where we can finally be honest with each other." He gestured toward a bench overlooking the water. Olivia reluctantly sat down, keeping a safe distance as Lucas stood before her. He began speaking, his tone measured and deliberate. "You've backed me into a corner, Olivia," he said. "I never wanted it to come to this, but you had to dig, didn't you? You had to tell David." Olivia's heart raced as she realized there would be no reconciliation, no resolution. "Lucas, you don't have to do this," she said, her voice trembling. "We can find a way forward. I won't tell anyone else, I swear." But her words only seemed to fuel his resolve. "You don't get it," he snapped, his voice rising. "My life, everything I've built, depends on this staying buried. I've worked too hard to let you destroy it." Without warning, Lucas lunged at her. Olivia screamed, trying to fight him off, but he was younger, stronger, and driven by desperation. He forced her to the ground, his hands tightening around her throat. The struggle was brief but violent. Olivia's cries muffled as Lucas's grip cut off her air. Her struggles weakened, and finally she went still. Lucas sat back, gasping for air as the gravity of what he'd done sank in. He stared at Olivia's lifeless body, her wide eyes reflecting the faint starlight. For a moment, guilt flashed across his face, but it was quickly replaced by cold determination. He dragged her body to the car, retrieving a shovel he had packed earlier. Lucas dug furiously, sweat pouring down his face despite the cold. The grave was shallow and hurried, the dirt barely covering Olivia's form. Once the task was done, Lucas wiped his hands on his pants and stared at the mound of earth. "It's done," he whispered to himself, as though saying it aloud would make it true. He climbed back into his car and drove away, leaving the clearing in silence, unaware that he had overlooked small but critical details that would lead to his undoing. In the days following Olivia's disappearance, Lucas played the role of the concerned husband to perfection. Standing before his congregation during Sunday service, he spoke with an air of desperation and grief. "My wife, Olivia, hasn't come home," he announced, his voice cracking for added effect. "Please, I ask for your prayers, your support, and any information you might have. She's everything to me." The congregation rallied behind him, offering condolences and assurances that they would keep an eye out for Olivia. Some even organized search parties, combing through local neighborhoods and wooded areas in hopes of finding her. But Lucas had meticulously planned the location of her grave, confident that no one would think to search in such a remote area. Despite his composed exterior, cracks in Lucas's story began to form. David Ward, the assistant pastor, was among the first to notice. Having been Olivia's confidant in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, David was already suspicious of Lucas. He had noticed Lucas's sudden shift in demeanor and the way his grief felt rehearsed rather than genuine. David decided to dig deeper. Using the excuse of assisting Lucas with church duties, he spent more time around the pastor's office and home, observing his behavior. What he found was troubling. Lucas seemed agitated, distracted, and uncharacteristically short-tempered. He also seemed overly concerned with controlling the narrative, often interrupting others who speculated too much about Olivia's disappearance. Meanwhile, Olivia's family was growing increasingly restless. Her sister, Lauren, was particularly vocal about her doubts regarding Lucas's version of events. "She would never leave without telling me," Lauren told detectives. "Something's not right. He knows more than he's letting on." Detectives assigned to the case, Sarah Milton and Robert Hayes, began their investigation with standard procedure: interviews, phone records, and a search of Olivia's home. Lucas cooperated willingly, eager to appear helpful. "Anything I can do to find her," he insisted, flashing his trademark smile. But beneath the charm, Detective Milton sensed something was off. "He's too polished," she later remarked to her partner. "Grief doesn't look like that. It's messy, raw. He's rehearsed this." The breakthrough came when Lauren provided detectives with Olivia's private journal, which she had taken from Olivia's home. In its pages, Olivia had chronicled her growing suspicions about Lucas. She wrote about following him to Austin, discovering his relationship with Daniel, and finding the documents that hinted at his plan to take her money. One entry, dated just days before her disappearance, stood out. "I've told David everything. If anything happens to me, he'll know who's responsible." The journal shifted the investigation into high gear. Detectives brought David in for questioning, and he confirmed Olivia's claims, recounting the conversations they had before her disappearance. Armed with this information, they obtained a warrant to search Lucas's car and property. It didn't take long for the cracks in Lucas's plan to widen. In the trunk of his car, detectives found traces of soil that matched the type found near the remote lake. GPS data from his phone revealed he had been in the area the night Olivia disappeared. Lucas's alibi, once airtight, was unraveling fast. The final nail in the coffin came when search teams, acting on the GPS data, discovered Olivia's shallow grave. The sight was gruesome. Her body barely concealed, her shawl still clinging to her shoulders. Forensic evidence linked Lucas directly to the scene, from fingerprints on the shovel to DNA found under Olivia's fingernails. When detectives confronted Lucas with the evidence, his mask of composure finally cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he muttered, his voice shaking. "She forced my hand." With the discovery of Olivia's body, the case against Lucas Harmon gained unstoppable momentum. The once adored pastor quickly became the prime suspect in a murder that shocked the entire community. Detectives Sarah Milton and Robert Hayes, bolstered by the physical evidence and witness testimonies, began assembling a case that painted a damning picture of Lucas's double life. Lucas was arrested during an early morning raid at his home. The same congregation that had rallied around him just days before now watched in stunned silence as officers led their pastor away in handcuffs. The images of Lucas, disheveled and handcuffed, flooded the media, tarnishing his once spotless reputation. During his initial interrogation, Lucas maintained his innocence, claiming he had no idea what had happened to Olivia. "I love my wife," he insisted. "I would never hurt her." But the detectives were prepared. They laid out the evidence methodically: the GPS data, the traces of soil in his car, the fingerprints on the shovel, and Olivia's journal. With each revelation, Lucas's facade crumbled further. The most damning piece of evidence, however, came from his secret relationship with Daniel. Detectives had tracked Daniel down and interviewed him, uncovering details of their years-long affair. Daniel, devastated by the news of Lucas's crime, provided incriminating text messages that showed Lucas's growing frustration with Olivia and his plans to secure her wealth. One message read, "I can't take it anymore. She's ruining everything. It has to end." Daniel's testimony, coupled with the physical evidence, left Lucas with no escape. Under mounting pressure, he finally broke down during a second interrogation. "She was going to destroy me," he said, his voice trembling. "She knew everything. I had no choice." The young pastor, once hailed as a beacon of hope, was now the central figure in a case that exposed the darkest sides of ambition and betrayal. Prosecutor Alex West opened the trial with a searing statement. "This is a story of manipulation, greed, and murder. A man who cloaked himself in faith, but harbored secrets so dark they led to the death of an innocent woman." Reed meticulously presented the evidence, from Olivia's journal entries to the forensic details that linked Lucas to the crime. Witnesses, including the assistant pastor David Ward and Daniel, testified about Lucas's deceit and desperation to protect his secrets. The courtroom was riveted when David recounted Olivia's tearful confession just days before her death. The defense, led by a high-profile attorney hired by Lucas's remaining supporters, argued that the murder was a crime of passion rather than premeditated. They painted Lucas as a man pushed to the edge by the complexities of his personal life, claiming that Olivia's confrontation triggered a moment of uncontrollable rage. But the jury was unconvinced. The evidence of Lucas's calculated actions, his planning of the murder, the preparation of the grave, and his attempts to cover his tracks, painted a chilling picture of a man who valued his secrets and ambition over human life. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the judge sentenced Lucas Harmon to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For many, the sentence was a bittersweet conclusion to a tragedy that had left deep scars on the community. In the aftermath of the trial, the once thriving church Lucas had built fell apart. The congregation, grappling with the betrayal of their trusted leader, disbanded, leaving the once vibrant building an eerie reminder of their misplaced faith. David Ward, shaken but determined, began rebuilding his life and ministry, vowing to restore trust and integrity to the church. Olivia's family, though devastated, found solace in the justice served and the enduring memory of her generosity and strength. The case of Lucas Harmon became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the devastating consequences of secrets and lies. It left lingering questions for the community and the nation. How could someone hide so much darkness behind such a charismatic facade? And how far would someone go to protect a life built on lies? The story of Lucas Harmon stands as a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be betrayed and how ambition, when left unchecked, can lead to unimaginable tragedy. What began as the tale of a rising star in the Texas ministry unraveled into a horrifying account of deceit, greed, and murder. Olivia Morgan's life, marked by kindness and resilience, was tragically cut short by the very man she believed was her second chance at love and happiness. The impact of this case continues to ripple. The once revered Pastor Harmon is now a cautionary figure, his name synonymous with betrayal and hypocrisy. Olivia's legacy, however, endures, her generosity and courage remembered by those who knew and loved her. As we conclude this harrowing tale, we are left with haunting questions. What drives someone to cross the line between desperation and depravity? Could the signs have been seen earlier, and could this tragedy have been prevented? Most importantly, how do we move forward from such darkness to rebuild trust and hope? If this story captivated you, be sure to subscribe to True Crimes Corner for more gripping narratives that expose the depths of human deception and the pursuit of justice. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Olivia's position? And how do we reconcile faith with the failings of those who preach it? Stay tuned for more stories that delve into the darkest corners of humanity, exploring betrayal, obsession, and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep questioning.